Steam operations under the wires seem to be going from strength to strength during the autumn. 44767 paired with 2005 was to work the northern section of the East Coast Main Line, with 6009 in action in the south. Unfortunately, the future of these operations is now in doubt following a flashover near King's Cross. The sight of steam under the wires is far from certain. This is Steam Video issue 17. In this issue, news special, steam from the capital with a highlight in the form of an A4 from the cross. News from the preserved lines, including a unique combination on the West Somerset. Main line action, with coverage of one of the busiest seasons ever. Steam across the moors, comprising some fine steam scenes from a classic preserved line. The Keighley and Worth Valley is considered by many to be one of our finest preserved lines. David Wilcock takes a look at a distinctive railway and explores its claim to fame. And finally, Steam Showcase, steam action from the country's finest cameramen. The autumn has seen unprecedented steam activity from London's termini. One notable visitor to the capital has been 46229 Duchess of Hamilton. The Duchess was to work 2 trains from Paddington over the weekend of the 5th and 6th of November. The Saturday departure ran to Stratford-upon-Avon and return. This was the Sunday departure, working via the Berks and Hants to Bath and Bristol. Sadly, the loco was to derail later in the trip while shunting at Bristol, and diesel haulage returned the train to Paddington. A week later, it was Waterloo's turn to play host to 46229, with a special running to Southampton, Salisbury and return. This trip had been in some doubt due to the ban placed a few days earlier on steam under the wires. This had threatened to maroon the Duchess, preventing its movement to Waterloo from Bristol. Later in the autumn came another steam-hauled trip from Victoria, this time by the re-liveried 30777 Sir Lemuel. Running to Canterbury and back via Dover, this trip had been postponed from the 9th of October. The steam activities at Waterloo, Victoria and Paddington were overshadowed by a scene few could ever have imagined. An A4 was once again at King's Cross and preparing to depart with the Elizabethan. Organised by Steam Railway magazine, 6009 was to work 2 trains to Peterborough over the weekend of the 29th and 30th of October. 30 years ago, 6009 had the distinction of being the last A4 to work north from King's Cross. Now, It was the first to return. The special was to run via the Hertford Loop, rejoining the East Coast Main Line at Langley Junction. From here, it ran slow lines to Peterborough. At Peterborough, number 9 ran round and hauled the train 10 to 1st to Wansford on the Nene Valley Railway. Here the A4 was to be turned and prepared for the return run. Another milestone in the preservation era had been achieved. On the East Lancs, a long-lost Jubilee was recreated in the form of 45698 Mars. Underneath was 5593 Kolhapur. This engine had assumed yet another identity earlier in the year, being turned out as 5552 Silver Jubilee on the Great Central Railway. On this occasion, it was paired with a Fowler tender from 42765 to provide a representation of the class as turned out in the 1930s. Newly repainted A4 Sir Nigel Gresley was a major attraction at the Great Central Steam Gala over the weekend of the 15th and 16th of October. The previous weeks had seen 4498 transformed into 6007 in early 1950s blue livery. It's expected to retain this livery for 2 years. The location is Kinchley Lane. (34101) Heartland and 35005 Canadian Pacific formed a popular duo. Later, Heartland powered the wind cutter wagons. The Seven Valleys Gala, held over the weekend of the 24th and 25th of September, drew record crowds, with 60103 Flying Scotsman a major attraction. The A3's next port of call is to be the Llangollen Railway, where the loco is scheduled for a 4-month stay. It had incidentally been turned on the railway's newly installed turntable. 7802 Bradley Manor was back on home territory after its season on the West Somerset Railway. The Gloucestershire and Warwickshire's Gala of the 15th and 16th of October saw 2 lone engines in action on an intensive passenger service. 34039 Boscastle had come from the Great Central Railway especially for the Gala. 6998 Burton Agnes Hall is normally based at Didcot and is guest engine for the railway's 1994 operating season. The duo were to be paired for several trains. This is the 1050 leaving Toddington for Far Stanley, 5 miles away. Contrasting with the former BR mainline performers were 2 industrial saddle tanks. Hunslet 060 Robert Nelson was purchased by the railway and moved to Toddington in 1989. Restoration was completed in 1993. Hunslet J94 060 Sir Robert Peel has been on loan to the Gloucestershire and Warwickshire since May 1993. Normally, it's based on the East Lancs Railway. They are departing Winchcombe for Far Stanley, the furthest extent of the railway at present. The West Somerset diesel weekend of the 29th and 30th of October saw an interesting steam-diesel combination in the form of High-Mech D7018, double-heading with Prairie Tack 4160. The duo are seen approaching Washford. This was an apt name for an area which saw 4 inches of rain fall over the weekend. This combination was a recreation of an aspect of Western Branch operation in the period 1962 to 1964. The 17th and 18th of September saw a steam gala. The newly installed passing loop at Crowcombe came into its own with the intensive service. The line between Norton Fitzwarren and Bishop's Lydiard played host to 2 return trips by passenger trains. This is the last return journey of the 17th. The Somerset and Dorset 280 is at the rear, and 7802 Bradley Manor is leading. On the 1st of October, Blue Peter began its journey south from Edinburgh, destination York, with the Heart of Midlothian rail tour. What was to have been a pioneering run over the East Coast Main Line turned into a disaster. That evening, Blue Peter was towed into Darlington Station, its motion wrecked. The A2 had suffered a catastrophic slip while climbing over Durham Viaduct. For 36 seconds, the motion had spun at speeds equal to well over 100 miles per hour, causing major damage to valve and running gear. The result was over £40,000 worth of damage. As the A2 was towed out of the station on the Sunday, it was obvious it would be many months before it could return to traffic. The annual return of steam over the West Highland Line took place late in October. Only this year with a difference. The Claymore was double-headed for the first time, with Black 5 44767 and K1 2005 providing motive power. Furthermore, departure from Fort William was in the morning, with passengers staying overnight. This guaranteed that the famous horseshoe curve was reached in daylight. The grade was tackled in steady rain. Furthermore, it was made at a speed far greater than the previous attempts with only one engine. Last year, the weather had been kinder, but late running ensured that the curve was reached after sunset. Both the K1 and Black 5 were en route for the North Yorks Moors Railway. The next day, a Sunday, would see the duo head south from Edinburgh along the East Coast Main Line to Newcastle. This was was the second time in 3 weeks that steam had traversed the northern section of this main line. The pair are departing Berwick after a pathing and water stop. No.17 made its final mainline run in September, operating the Scarborough-Spa Express. The Jubilee ran outward via Harrogate and represented the first steam on this circular route for many years. With its main line certificate expired, 45596 was to go to the East Lancs Railway for a spell of duty. Further south, there were some interesting one-off specials. 46203 Princess Margaret Rose is seen on a Nottingham to Stratford charter organised by the John Player Railway Society. A positioning run from Worcester to Ealing Broadway was undertaken by No. 9 to move it in readiness for its exploits at King's Cross. The Capital Streak ran via Sapperton Bank to Didcot. No. 9 is seen on the recently added relief line. From Didcot, its route took it through Reading and the Western Main Line to West London. A few days later came another steam first. 6024 King Edward I worked the Torbay Venturer from Newport to Paynton via the Severn Tunnel. The last steam to pass through the tunnel was back in 1971, when 6000 was working as part of the Return to Steam programme. The weekend of the 8th and 9th of October saw a remarkable variety of steam operation on the Western, centred on Westbury and Yeovil. First came 5029 on the Mendipman, running from Paddington to Cranmore and return. The special is seen east of Westbury and represented the first steam over the Berks and Hants. Then came 828, heading the ex-Parrot excursion operated by Pathfinder Tours. Starting in Bristol, the special was to run to Yeovil, Exeter, and then back to Bristol via Taunton. .5029 was to follow on the same route just 5 minutes later. Such frequency of steam traffic is somewhat rare on the main line. Also in operation was M7 30053. On the Saturday and Sunday, the 4-coach train made a return trip each day from Yeovil to Maiden Newton. This included the 1 in 59 climb to Evershot Tunnel. Yeovil Pen Mill now represents one of the few remaining pockets of semaphore signalling on the Western. The former London and South Western Railway tank was disguised as 30129 for a series of shuttles to Junction Station. The bay platform at Junction Station was used for the event. The locomotive had been turned the previous evening. The sidings on the station's east side played host to the Yeovil Rail Fair. 70,000 Britannia was giving footplate rides in the yard.
No, you should push him to the branch. Oh, sorry.
The previous month, the Brit had made an outing on the Southern, running through Ashford to Dover and return. This run marked the closure of Dover Western Docks, and the loco was renumbered and renamed 70014 Iron Duke for the occasion. Following Clan Line's private charter to Portsmouth, the engine made its first public run in mid-November. First leg of the run was from Waterloo to Yeovil. From Yeovil, the stock was diesel hauled to Weymouth, with Clan Line following light engine. Then came the highlight of the run, an ascent of the formidable 1 in 50 Upwey Bank. The delightful conditions of this day contrasted with the dreadful weather of last November's steam run from Weymouth. This is a fitting end to our review of one of the busiest ever seasons on the main line. To many, the North Yorkshire Moors Railway offers the perfect combination of steam and scenery. The line's autumn gala is a major event on the steam calendar. This year's gala, held over the weekend of the 8th and 9th of October, provided ideal conditions. The 1 in 49 climb from Gromont to Goathland provides an amazing range of photographic possibilities. Seen from high above Esk Valley, around a mile from Gromont, Tor Valley begins the long climb. Following the expiry of its main line certificate, 34027 has worked on various preserved railways. Soon after these runs, it was withdrawn from traffic pending overhaul to mainline standard. .75014, newly restored on the North York Moors Railway, is scheduled to operate on the main line next year. The standard works south near Newtondale Holt. Now back to the climb from Gromont near Green End Bridge. Double heading was a popular aspect of the gala. Another feature was a demonstration freight. Now to the approaches of Levisham Station. Black 5428 has recently returned to traffic on the railway following major repairs. WD 210 Dame Vera Lynn is on the grade between Darnholm and Thomas and Foss. The North York Moors Railway has a second 210 being currently finished in BR Black and in the final stages of restoration. An hourly passenger service was to operate on both days of the gala. And now, a classic location from the moors above Newtondale as the Black 5 and WD head south. In terms of passenger numbers and revenue, this was to be the railway's best ever autumn gala. For the photographer, the ideal weather was an equal blessing.
Every one of Britain's steam railways has its own particular mood, its own identity and its own aura. But they're all run on much the same basis. They generally have a general manager, a catering manager, a team of fitters to keep the wheels oiled and keep things in motion. But this railway is rather different. It's one of the best and certainly one of the most reputable railways in the country, and yet it has one of the smallest payrolls. In 26 years of passenger operation, it's never had a board of directors, a general manager or a catering manager. Significantly, it's never had a bank overdraft either. So how does the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway manage to stay out in front? We're about to find out. Graham, you started operating services here on my birthday, actually, in 1968. I don't remember too much about that, but you certainly do. What recollections do you have of those early days with steam on the Worth Valley?
Well, it was all very much a struggle because in '68, of course, we didn't really know whether we'd even survive. We were one of the very first of the steam-operated independent railways. Only the Middleton was also operating in the north of England, and I think only the Bluebell was operating in the south of England at the time. So we'd no blueprint really to go on, and we had to make up the plans as we went along. We had to evolve our development rather than work to a pre-designed plan.
The locomotive fleet was a bit Heath Robinson in those days, as well as the coaching stock, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, we certainly had a large number of industrial locomotives, which, although they worked hard and gave us very good service, were perhaps not what people would now want to see working on what we like to present as the 1950s, 1960s branch line. I mean, gradually we evolved a policy of black locomotives in British Rail standard style, with the lion emblem, and maroon coaches. And of course we developed also a house style for our stations. I mean, one of the things we've been very proud of on the Worth Valley is that we've been able to preserve and develop a complete railway. We've always had the whole branch from Keighley to Oxenhope, not just a segment of an earlier line. And so we put a lot of time and attention into our stations and into our structures, as well as into our locos and our carriage fleet.
Right from day one, Howarth Goods Shed behind me here has been the railway's locomotive workshop engineering depot, where major overhauls of locomotives have taken place. The whole scene is one very much intrinsic of the 1950s period, with only one or two small giveaways. The scene is of course marred just a bit by the appearance of diesels and diesel shunters, diesel rail cars, diesel multiple units. Well, the railway is going to do something about that. In the fullness of time, there are plans to build a diesel depot down at Keighley, and Howarth here will revert to being a 100% steam shed. The Worth Valley has seen many celebrity engines over the years. It doesn't have too many celebrity engines, or should I say big name engines, resident on the railway. It does have one, Bahamas, the Stanier Jubilee, double chimney Jubilee, just poking its nose out of the shed there, which came to the railway with the Bahamas Locomotive Society when it relocated from Dinting Railway Centre in 1990. If you'd emigrated from Yorkshire in, say, 1961 and come back here today, you could never know there'd been a change of ownership, or even know that railway preservation had come about at Keighley. If you'll pardon the use of a 3F freight engine on a passenger train, that is. Keighley Station, it's pretty as a picture, isn't it? And yet when the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway wanted to buy it from British Rail in 1962, British Rail were reluctant because they felt there was a danger that the Preservation Society, if it didn't fulfil its aims, would allow the station to become just a derelict eyesore. Well, you can probably guess what happened. It wasn't the Worth Valley station which became the derelict eyesore, it was another one very close by which belongs to British Rail. If there is such a thing as the world's most famous turntable, then this one surely is it. This innocuous looking little beast was the turntable which was installed at Hawes Junction, we know that now these days as Garsdale, in 1884, which at the turn of the century became the subject of a considerable legend on the Settle and Carlisle line, when allegedly a Johnson 440 of the Midland Railway, having piloted a train down from Carlisle, was being turned to head back towards that northern outpost, and in the teeth of an extraordinarily fierce gale, the turntable and the locomotive were set spinning uncontrollably, and the men were unable to bring it to a halt. Did it really happen? Well, there have been many scientific theories put forward on this. You'll have to be your own judge. The Pennine weather can be fairly uncompromising, particularly in the case of vintage wooden-bodied vehicles of the Victorian era, 4- and 6-wheeled coaches dating back to the 1880s. This was the problem for the Worth Valley in the 1960s, how to protect these coaches when preservation was supposed to be the name of the game. This carriage museum at Ingrove, opened by the Vintage Carriage Trust in 1990, was the answer to that problem. It provides a roof and a home for some of the most antiquated and precious coaches on the Worth Valley. Oakworth was, of course, one of the principal locations for the feature film The Railway Children. The feature film, shot in 1970, was preceded by a television series of The Railway Children in 1968, filmed entirely in black and white, which was in some ways an injustice to Oakworth, except it wasn't Oakworth then, it was seen as Meadow Vale. When Lionel Jeffries, the producer of the Railway Children feature film, came here, he agreed to allow the railway to retain the name Oakworth, and hence the fame of the Keighley and Worth Valley was spread far and wide. While the KWVR has control over the look and the appearance of the railway itself, the one thing of course it doesn't have control over is the appearance of the landscape around it. And this part of West Yorkshire, once renowned for its famous dark satanic mills, these days has mills of a rather different kind, like this one up here. Bit incongruous, don't you think? It's said that every railway needs goals and ambitions to stimulate and sustain the interest of its volunteer members, and usually that means building extensions or reopening sections of closed track. The Worth Valley Railway can't do that because the 5-mile branch from Keighley has always finished right here at Oxenhope. In the absence of a line extension, however, the Worth Valley Railway has Oxenhope Exhibition Shed, and this for many years has been a sort of material for ongoing restoration projects. Witness the present projects concerning a WD 280 ex-Swedish Railways, which is being restored to BR condition as number 90733, and an ex-Taff Vale Railway 062 tank number 85. The exhibition shed remains a storehouse of engines and initiatives for the volunteers of the future to exercise their minds. Well, there you have it, 26 years of operation, no PLC, no big share launch, no general manager, no commercial manager, no paid team of fitters, all done on the strength of volunteer input and just a small paid staff of 3. The Worth Valley has ploughed its own furrow, gone its own way, and it has no imitators. Has the railway succeeded? Well, what do you think?
The expansion of the mainline steam network has led to a host of new steam routes and locations. At the start of the year, few could have imagined that Duchess of Hamilton would ever be performing on the Paddington to Bristol main line. The Duchess accelerates away from Bath Station on a Paddington to Bristol special. Autumn steam in the Highlands, as 44767 and 2005 climb away from Crianlarich with the Claymore, destination Edinburgh. The reliveried and renumbered Sir Nigel Gresley has proved one of the autumn's photographic delights. Finally, the renamed Collopoa works on the East Lancashire Railway. Into the gloom of one tunnel and out of another. Only the identity of the locomotive remains the same.